like to call to order this meeting of the Justice and Public Safety. If you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we wouldn't mind, I'd like to take a moment of silence in honor of President George W.H. Bush. So we can have a moment of silence, please. Next item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Moved by Commissioner Drolet, supported by Commissioner Duge. Please vote. Vote passes, looks like 10 to zip. It is 10 to zip. Okay, we next have public participation. Anybody in the audience wish to speak? You have 5 minutes to speak of anything on the agenda. Seeing no one, we'll move to department recommendations. First on the agenda is the agreements between the Warren, Sterling Heights, Mount Clemens, East Point Animal Control Services. We have our Chief Animal Control Officer here, Officer Jeff Randazzo.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon, Mr. Randazzo. Before you start, I'm sorry, can we get a motion to forward this? We have Commissioner Leonetti, supported by Commissioner Kleinfeld. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Leonetti. Oh, Duge? Sure. Duge. Go ahead, Officer Randazzo.
Good afternoon. These are our annual contracts for the cities of Warren, Sterling Heights, Mount Clemens, and East Point. There have been a few changes to the contracts this year, just kind of like most years. There are some items that did stay the same. Would you like me to go through the items that did change?
How many items are there?
Looks like there's 6 items that did change.
We make any more money?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. The daily board fee increased to $25 from $22. That is because the cost of our medications, our food supplies, vaccines, utilities, and other sanitizers that we use did increase as well. Disposal fees stayed the same, with the addition that we are charging those municipalities $25 per deer carcass that they do bring to us. And that is because those carcasses take hours to actually incinerate. So it's holding up our facility. So I feel like, that's just cause to increase that fee. Owner surrenders, that is going to be the biggest increase, and that is from $41 to $50. And that is because we do not encourage people to surrender their pets. These cities have their own animal control, and they should utilize their animal control, should be an avenue for those residents to take as far as rescue groups, placing those animals outside of the county animal control facility. We work with many rescues, and when those animals are surrendered to us, it becomes our staff's responsibility to place those animals into rescue groups, behaviorally assess them, vaccinate them, sterilize them. So that is for the cost of the increase is due to those services that we provide to those animals. Euthanasia increased $1. That's because the state is requiring all the staff at Macomb County Animal Control, other than the clerical staff, to be recertified in euthanasia and tranquilization. So that's going to try to help offset that cost as well. Quarantine stayed the same. The only addition was that there has been an increase for each board day that an animal, after it was quarantined, was raised from $22 to $30, and that was because most of the time those animals require special care because they're going to be extremely aggressive or they're going to have some sort of medical need, and we want those cities to respond very rapidly and get them out of our care once the quarantine's over. Rabies testing, which is mandated by the state, increased from $77 to $80. Again, it has to do with our state certifications. That's an increase for that, as well as the tranquilization increase from $158 to $160. Again, that has to do with our staff being recertified. And do you have any other questions? Okay.
Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Thank you, Chair. What was the 158 to 60?
That was tranquilization for any city that's requesting us to tranquilize animals for them.
Okay. Okay, my first question is, as I have 4 agreements in front of me, and they're all identical to each other. Are these agreements the only agreements that are they the entirety of the agreements that you have with these cities with respect to animal control?
Correct, yes.
Okay. These cities, are all these cities getting the exact same animal control services for these agreements?
Correct. So these contracts are just to set service fees. They are not to designate the amount of animals that we'll accept from them, if we accept any animals from them.
Do you have a separate contract for animal control officers with Warren, Sterling Heights, and Mount Clemens?
Do I have a separate contract?
Is there a separate contract, or does this constitute the entirety of the contracts with
Nope,
them?
these are all these contracts are all the same for all the cities.
Okay.
So there's no other contract
There's
other
no
than these
other contracts.
Other than these cities. We do have contracts with Roseville and St. Clair Shores, but we provide all their animal control services.
Correct.
These are different.
Okay, okay. We have 4 agreements in front of us that are identical.
Correct.
These are the entirety of the agreements with these 4 cities, correct?
Correct.
There are no other agreements with these 4 cities, correct?
Correct.
Do these 4 cities get the same services from your department? All 4 of them, do they get the same services equally from your department?
Yes.
You do not have animal control officers that are in 3 of these cities at any time?
No, we do assist them, but they have their own, these 4 cities have their own animal control.
You assist Sterling Heights, do you assist East Point?
We do assist East Point if they call us.
I thought that you had agreements with these other cities that you had animal control officers. They weren't dedicated to those cities, but you have 5 animal control officers and they went into those cities.
We do. So what we do is in the contract, it will say if a city's requesting us to come in and tranquilize an animal for them, that's where this tranquilizer fee would come in. So if they're requesting us to come assist them, then we would go into the city and we'd help them out if we have available staff to help them.
Okay, but during budget, you indicated that East Point and St. Clair Shores were doing contracts where they had a dedicated officer.
Roseville.
But these other cities, you provided officers, 5 of them that went through that provided for the other cities, and they were not being charged, and they were not being charged a percentage of the employees within your building, as were St. Clair Shores and Warren. East Point didn't have an agreement yet. So they had not yet signed the agreement to have the dedicated officers. So my question is, if approving this, does that mean that East Point has those same services where the same with the 5 officers that East Point?
No.
They do not have the same as Warren, Sterling Heights, and
They have this contract that's in front of them. They don't have an animal control service contract with us. This is just for service fees.
and the others don't either. So
I guess
is there a difference between the services that these 3 get from our county and the services that East Point gets? Because
no, these are the same exact contract.
I know that these are the same contracts.
Well, I don't understand what you're trying to say.
During budget, you indicated, and you said you would like to eventually have those other cities also pay a portion.
When you say those other cities,
Everything but East Point, St. Clair Shores, and Roseville that was using our animal control.
so these are annual contracts. East Point has always been, since my existence here, has always engaged in these annual contracts.
Yes, I understand that. I think
Okay.
you're trying to get to where I'm going instead of listening to my question, if
I'm
you
listening.
please.
Okay.
So my question is, during budget, we talked about the fact East Point was looking to go to a dedicated officer.
Correct.
But East Point, and you wanted to charge a percentage of the employees within your building, and St. Clair Shores and Roseville the same way. But you indicated the other cities did not have a setup where they paid for the animal control officers, the 5 officers that patrolled those other areas, or a percentage of the employees in the building, correct?
These others?
No, get off, don't.
Okay. The other cities like Fraser, Utica,
That doesn't apply to Sterling Heights or Warren, they don't have,
they have their own animal control.
okay, so that was one of my questions. So all of these have their own animal control ordinances and animal control,
Officers.
okay. Okay, so the ones that we're talking about, the other ones that we were talking about, are we setting up that these all expire at the same time so that we can negotiate the same thing with all of the cities and townships?
So when you're talking about
There are
like the
townships. Yeah, there are townships.
right, so when you're talking about the contracts, not these specific ones, but St. Clair Shores and Roseville, and you're asking me, do those contracts expire at the same time?
No,
Because nobody else has contracts in this entire county except for
St.
these
Clair
four-
Shores and Roseville.
Correct.
Yes, I understand that. But nobody else pays a percentage of the employees in the building, correct?
Correct.
And you said you wanted to correct that, correct?
Yes.
And these contracts are up right now. Would this not be the time that you would correct that?
Yes, that would be great, but I don't know if I have the liberty to do that.
Okay, so those cities, and if East Point were to use your services, which they have chosen not to over this issue right now, they have to pay for a percentage of the employees, but all of these other cities do not have to pay for a percentage of the employees in the building with these agreements, correct?
Right, but East Point's not paying for any of the employees.
No, East Point is not, because they wouldn't sign that contract because of what other cities were getting, correct?
Correct. You're talking
Okay.
about St. Clair Shore, like the other cities.
No,
Well,
what
yes.
everybody else, not St. Clair Shores
Right.
and Roseville. East Point said, wait a
Utica,
second.
right.
We actually should get the same thing that everybody else gets. And so they didn't sign that contract. Okay, so
So
my,
what's important with that statement is to realize when I inherited animal control, East Point has always had their own dedicated officer, and these other communities that we're referring to did not. And if they want that same level of service, then there is a cost to that. So for example, St. Clair Shores, they had their own animal control officer.
but
They-
if East Point didn't have an animal control officer,
Okay.
okay? And I know I'm going long and I might have to relinquish the floor and come back, but this is really important. If East Point didn't have its own animal control officer, can it be afforded everything that all of these cities and townships have with your department minus St. Clair Shores and Roseville? So those 5 officers would also patrol through East Point. Would they have that same option?
Not without a fee. They would have to pay a fee.
Are the others paying a fee?
Only St. Clair Shores and Roseville.
So the other cities can get it without a fee, but East Point cannot get it without a fee?
Because East Point already had an established animal control ordinance, and in their charter, they
That's,
already had an animal control officer, and they provided that service. So there is state law that says if they want to provide that service, then they.
and I said if they did not.
If
would
they
we-
did not
would
want
we
to have
pro-
their animal control officer,
If they did not have animal control, would we provide that service?
we would. We could
Okay.
easily provide it,
Okay, we would.
but there's a fee to that.
There's a fee to them. Is there a fee to the other cities that we are providing it for?
But that's a bigger discussion, as we mentioned before, because if we either have to talk about a millage, because that's something I inherited. When I started, those other cities had already had no animal control officer.
Okay, so I have a question for Steve. Steve, has your department done some research on the law with regard to this?
No. In terms of whether we have to whether the county is required to provide animal control services to, I'll go the other direction in the county, out to the northern townships.
No, to cities and townships that don't have an ordinance and don't have an animal control officer. Have you done research with
No.
respect to that?
No.
Okay. I'm going to relinquish. I may have one or two more questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Carabelli. He passes. Commissioner Brown?
Thank you. Do you have like an animal SWAT team that goes in and helps other communities if they've got issues that they can't handle?
Yes.
Okay. There was an issue in Sterling Heights I was aware of that there was a skunk. And multiple shots were fired, 6 shots as I recalled, to take care of one skunk. And I was comforted to know that it wasn't Macomb County because they weren't there. But do you get called in on issues like that? I mean, why would it, that seems excessive for one thing, but.
We have helped Sterling Heights just recently as well with, sick or injured animals. And so we assist all of our communities. All they have to do is make a phone call and we'll be more than happy to assist them.
But is it one person? How many people do they have on their team? Maybe was it more than one job? And there was a couple cars called and everything else. It was kind of a cluster, seemed like. But
Yeah, we normally have, I have a lead deputy that's on the road. I'm on the road as well. So if there's a situation, we just, we'll call the command officer from that department, just ask them what's going on. And then I could usually gauge how many officers we would need to go assist them.
sometimes it can be risky. I mean, and sometimes these unusual exotic animals are sometimes roaming out there in people's
Right.
yards. And
Absolutely. Well, Warren, remember the pet shop? I mean, that was, and the county took on that brunt of that, right?
this time of year, we're seeing a lot of sleeping deer along the road out in the north end of the county and
Right.
just about everywhere. Have you picked up your pace at all, the collection? I know they go up there certain times a day because you can't be everywhere at once. So how do you handle this time of year?
So this time of year, what we're doing is we have enough staff usually only on Wednesday, and we'll go out there on Wednesday and we'll remove all the carcasses that people have called in. We have a live list that we keep, and then we'll send that list out with a kennel attendant, and then we'll remove all the carcasses from the roadway.
When I've called in, I believe I've called in a lot. I've never had no issues. It's always been good and time as nothing's been laying out for an extended period of time. So, but I was wondering if you beefed up this time of year or not. And the answer is no. You've got enough systems in place to keep it up.
Yeah, we try to do every Wednesday.
All right, very good. Thank you very much for the good job you're doing for us. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Sauger?
I just got one question, Chief. Has our legal department here looked over these contracts and okayed everything?
These do go to the county executive office. I believe from there they do go to Aaron Thomas, who is in Corporation Counsel, and then they come here to the Board of Commissioners meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Excuse me, just a quick response. I see Ms. Kleinfeld's on the second round. I understand you have some questions regarding East Point, specifically East Point. Why wouldn't you not get together with Officer Randazzo and work those out, then come to the committee and bring it up? Okay, you're up on the second round.
Thank you. I'm sorry. There were a couple of other things. These are in front of us, but they haven't yet, have they been in front of the cities, these changes that you're talking about? Have the cities received these?
No, the cities do not receive them till after the Board of Commissioners approves them. And then once the board approves them, then they go out to the cities for the city councils to approve them. That's how
Steve,
it's always historically been.
Do the contracts that we do, like the sheriff and don't they usually go to the cities first for approval before they come here?
Oh, sorry. I'm like that, I don't know.
Typically, yeah. It's
Okay.
usually the opposite.
Right, so
they come here, so when the board is voting on them, generally speaking, I
They've
can't
already
speak for every
approved
single
them.
contract, of course, that we know here that the local unit is, or the
Okay.
vendor, I should say.
Okay, and my
is okay with it.
understanding is they may not have even seen these changes. So
That I don't
could you
know.
look into whether or not we're doing these backwards as opposed to going to the cities first?
Sure.
Okay, and one more question, Steve. Should this be contracts the way that he's doing it with each individual city and township, or should we have a standard fee schedule that applies to everybody? According to the way,
I guess that's a matter of interpretation of the law, I suppose. It would be my response to that. Whether we should charge all communities is
Okay, could
a
you-
decision, it's kind of an administrative decision versus whether we need to or should provide services, or, I think I know where you're going with this.
well, because,
So,
Just a
I
point of
thought
order,
that you-
Mr. Chair, point of order. I'm sorry, but I think some of these questions are appropriate for our legal department. I'm not sure Steve in finance, who keeps track of the money, is in charge of writing up contracts.
you're right. The reason I was asking him is because I know that there's a finance association like Michigan Association of Counties, and my understanding was that there were inquiries with respect to the law with this from your department. So I thought you already
Might
knew.
have been something
So I thought you
informal that-
already knew those answers, so I apologize.
no, I've not been,
No, it wasn't you.
yeah, and somebody else might be doing research that I'm not
Okay.
aware of.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. So we have a motion on the floor by Leonetti, supported by Duje. I'd like to forward this to finance. Please vote. Motion to move it to finance passes 9-1 with Ms. Kleinfeld voting no. 10-1? Oh, Pouchot, oh, didn't see him. 10-1, sorry. Next is the contract with the
Thank you, Commissioners.
Civil Staffing Resource LLC, Foreclosure Civil Services. Sheriff Wickersham, who is not in attendance, has given his first best up. Captain Roberts, uh-oh, there's two of them out there. Better just say Captain Roberts.
There you
Captain
go.
Roberts, go ahead.
Afternoon. So the Civil Division, the history with the county is that it's been contracted out as a service. It's with the statutory requirements for the sheriff to be responsible, but the county has historically been doing contracts to a vendor to provide those services. That it's been a much less expensive proposition to do it that way, and that thus far the services that have been done very well, and they continue to be. So the contract basically was up this year. The current vendor advised that they weren't able, due to the continuing decline, which is a good thing for the people, that the services, the foreclosure side of things has continued to decline, so that's a good thing. The negative side of it is for the county and for the vendor is that the revenue side has gone down as well, so that they weren't able to continue it at the existing contract. So we did put it out to bid. It went through all the normal processes, and there was only one bid that was received. And that's the one that you have in your packet there, I believe, that was presented. It is the current vendor with the new process, the new pay scale is in there. And I know that we received a couple questions this afternoon regarding revenue to the county over the past couple of years. So I don't know if you want that now, or if you want to wait for someone to ask a question on it.
If you have the numbers, Captain, go ahead.
Okay, so in 2017, the revenue was 56,000, about 600, 56,600. So far in 18, it's 43,3. If it keeps on track, it would probably be about 51. So about a $5,000 or so reduction from last year on the revenue side. The numbers of the foreclosures have, as I mentioned, continuously gone down since 2010, where there were 7,460 to the estimate for this year is 731. Wow. So about a tenth of the amount, which, like I said, is a good thing for we the people. But on the side of the county, the revenue side is reduced accordingly as well. So in order for this, the process, the way that it's in the proposal, we would continue to be offering the same services, which have been very effective not only at providing the services, but they've also, because of the very knowledgeable people involved, have been able to really help out in some areas where there were some scams going on and some other hits on different groups of people, and able to get information to the proper places and stop that sort of action going on. So some positives there. But the proposed one now is that there would be the minimum, basically, that after 100,000 in revenue came in, that the split then would occur thereafter. So on the side of can the vendor continue to do it and not make any money at it? I don't know that's really I can understand how a business is not going to want to continue to operate and not make any money. On our side, we know that if we were to try to come forward to the county, to the board, and say, let us have staffing to do it ourselves, we know that the expense side would be much greater than perhaps the amount of revenue loss here is. And we know that if there is a downturn again, hopefully it's not going to occur like it did back then, 2008, 2010. Hopefully that's not going to ever happen again. But if it did, we know that the revenues, there is still that spot in place that the vendor's not going to be the one making all the money. The county would again be have revenue coming in if that were to be the case.
Thank you, Captain Roberts. Before we go ahead with this, I need a motion to forward this to Finance, please. We have Commissioner Sauger making the motion. Commissioner Lucido, second. We need some speakers up there, if any. I don't see anybody up here, so.
You should have Commissioner Drolet up there. He's the IT wizard here.
We have Commissioner Duje up on top. Mr. Duje, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Captain.
Afternoon.
I'm glad you addressed the Sheriff Department costs. Question, have any of these servers ever been hurt? And are we responsible for?
No, the vendor is fully responsible for the persons that they employ to do the services. And thus far, I don't know of any, during my time, I don't know of any serious injuries that have occurred.
Nobody's lost their minds because they're getting thrown out of their house.
Well, I'm not sure about that part, but I know that the people that have done the work, are doing a great job at it. It's not an easy job at times,
No.
not one that people look forward to, but they've done it in such a manner that that people have stayed safe.
All right. Last but not least, you mentioned it, and I was talking about the scam business that now supposedly with all this information and records online that people can take over your house and take loans out and so on and so forth. Have we gotten to that problem in Macomb County? Do you know of anything like that?
Well, I'm not going to talk about specifics, probably not
Okay.
a good idea for that, but I can tell you that yes, there were things that were brought to the attention of different jurisdictions and different levels of investigative areas, and that some illegal might be the wrong word, improper to illegal
Dubious.
practices were prevented from continuing to be victimizing.
So this is
people in
on your
this county.
radar, and as you find out about it, you're
It's on
trying
our
to
radar,
take-
but I would say that we're fortunate that the people who are providing this service to the sheriff's office, to the county, it's on their radar, and that through their businesses and through their experience there, they have It's probably higher on their radar than it is on ours as
right.
far as seeing it ahead of time and knowing what to look for. And they're the ones that have been making these reports.
All right, very good. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Doozy. Next on the list is Commissioner Drulett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Captain. I've noted a number of contracts have come before this board in the last year or so have held only one bidder. And this is another one of those. And I'm curious as to why you might think that we didn't have additional companies bidding on it.
Well, I think in this case, as opposed to some of the others,
Yeah.
I don't think businesses see it as a profitable endeavor. And since the guidelines, they saw what the guidelines were in the past, and then we put it out with the guidelines basically being more open, but continuing to put out there that there was expected to be some revenue sharing, revenue coming back to the county, that I think looking at the numbers, the reduction as they continue to go down, people that are in the businesses that are looking at it and seeing what their expenses would be, it's not seen as profitable enough to try to underbid or to fight for it.
It's just not a big enough of a deal. But the company that did bid, the one that's been doing the service,
Yes.
apparently thought it was still worth pursuing in some manner.
Well, they saw that they know that the service they're providing is good. They know that the relationship they have working with the county is good. They knew what they needed to come in at in order for it to be profitable enough to continue to be a part of their business.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. That's the only question I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. And next we have on Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just kind of tagging along what Leon's questions were. This company's been with us since like 2010, since the Great Recession. We've been using this company consistently.
It was, I forget the initial year that they came in. There was some concern back the prior, the way that it was set up. It became exceptionally profitable for the business prior to this and caused a lot of angst among people. Back when we had those 7,000 foreclosures, it was a huge dollar amount, and the county wasn't part of the profit sharing.
Okay, I was wondering, that was going to be my next question.
Then
yeah.
that's when it was no, we need to do something different with the formula, and that's when it came in that this service, this provider, had the best sharing with the county and was awarded the contract.
Do you know how the decision to come up with the $100,000 before the county gets to share 50%? Do you know who came up with that number?
This is the bid from the vendor.
Okay.
Going through their
Analysis.
through their bottom line of the cost and what their employee cost. It is a full-time job for at least a person, plus the business doing all the oversight, audit, finance, banking, hiring all of the people that actually go out and do the services, scheduling. I mean, there's a lot there, so it's not just a part-time service, really. So I think they drew what they found to be an acceptable profit margin, if it were, and then that's where their proposal came in. Plus, they didn't know that they were going to wind up being the only bidder, right? So they're keeping it at a level that is acceptable to them, but they feel is minimal. And in this case, nobody else bid against them, but they didn't know that.
If you know, too, did they bring that $100,000 number down? Like, in other words, since foreclosures are going down, did they bring down that ceiling then, or did they? If you know, was it like 150,000 when times are, when foreclosure times are booming, or
Right.
if you know?
Prior to this, the agreement was just a split 50-50.
Okay.
There wasn't the cap before it started. I think that had been proposed by some of the other vendors before, but theirs was a straight 50-50. But that 50% on their side now, their bottom line is getting really thin. And if the trend continues, hopefully it does, it's going to be, there is no profit.
Okay. All right, thank you. Good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Leonetti. Commissioner Sauger?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, being a process server is a specialized field. They make some good money, and they charge the attorney. It don't cost him a dime, because he passes it on to the clients. But with what's going on with some of these process servers today, there isn't as many good ones out there. I was one of them. I did it for many years. But it's a specialized field to be one. So, huh?
That's it? Thank you. We have a motion by Sauger, a second by Lucido to forward this to Finance. Please vote. Vote came back 11-0. Next, we have purchase Motorola radio replacement project. We have Deputy County Commissioner Vicki Wolber and Brandon Lewis. Ms. Wolber.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You have before you, and I know your very large packet, you have our packet for the purchase of the items related to basically changing out, making some new radio purchases for the radios within the county that are basically becoming obsolete. So you have in front of you, there's a summary sheet, obviously, that hopefully is helpful to you. But what we've basically compiled is for 9 departments, so there are 10 quotes within the packet because they broke out emergency management and the radio department just because it's easier for us too. But basically we gave you pricing for Motorola based on their current state contract. Also they gave us a lease purchase option as well as then a special discount pricing for Macomb County as a whole. What our office, or the emergency management office, organized was basically, since all the radios are becoming obsolete in the county, if we pulled together this countywide type purchasing, could we gain a bigger discount than what is out there today? And yes, we were able to do that based on the potential amount of radios. In addition to and tied to buying new radios, there are some other fees that are on that summary sheet as well that we had to make sure we accounted for. So there is a state activation fee. So every new radio we put on the system is $250. That replaces the state membership fee. If you remember, we used to or potentially had to pay the state $200 per radio that we had on the system every year. We never had to do that as a county because we had $1 million worth of credit for the system that we built out. The state finally stopped that practice of the $200 membership fee back in October of 2015. And this is our first time purchasing basically new radios on the system. So it's basically a one-time fee, $250. So still very much a win from us from a monetary standpoint. There are also then certain installation or service fees that our technical services or radio department needs to perform for those county departments. So those are itemized on the fee schedule as well. And then there are also a couple other minor fees associated just with certain departments. Some of the departments, as you can imagine, my office and then also the sheriff's office, who have quite an exorbitant amount of radios, want to have them engraved. We've always done that. We engrave them with our department name and then just a tracking number so we can recover them easily should they get lost. So there's some departments that want the engraving done. And then also, in particular to the sheriff's office, they have their motorcycle unit who has their helmet system and their microphones that have to tie into the radios. And because we're upgrading to new radios, those helmets have to be replaced as well. So that's why you have a separate quote for that approximately $15,000 or so. Basically, when we did the pricing and with the state going back to the state activation fee, We have a credit coming again for the 5 new towers that we added to the system, so that was an amount that we were able to save off of the overall price, which is roughly $294,000. We kind of dispersed that between the various departments, so each department got a credit for that. We laid out the pricing, though, based per department, so you could see what each of those items are and what their total cost is. Overall, we're essentially purchasing 1,447 radios for those county departments at a cost of roughly $3.8 million. As the board had asked previously, we did go back and ask some of the departments if they had other sources of funding that could be applied to these purchases. And essentially what we're looking at from the general fund or capital project fund, roughly $3.1 million. Public Works is contributing $72,000 for their portion of the radio, covering the majority of their costs. Road Department, just under $470,000. And then for the Sheriff's Office, we were able to isolate radios just for dispatch purposes, and they will be contributing from their 911 fund roughly $181,000. That's essentially the high-level version of what you have in front of you, and I have Sean McCarthy here, who's the service manager for the radio department. He was integral in working with each of the individual departments as well as Motorola on putting their individual quotes together, and we'd be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Wolpert. Before I go to commissioners, I need a motion to forward this to finance, please. Commissioners. Commissioner Duje, Commissioner Carabelli, is that a second? Commissioner Sager. Okay, I'm going to open it up to commissioners. We'll start with Commissioner Kleinfeld, please.
Thank you, Chair. Steve, the paperwork we have, and it was initiated on 11/27, but it indicates the funding is budgeted in the 2019 capital plan, not 2018, and it'll require board approval to transfer it. Have we done that when we did all those transfers? Did we do
No,
this?
so the cost of this is included in the $13.6 million of transfers to the capital improvement fund. They got reclassified to capital outlay sort of in the 11th hour of the budget process. So,
Okay.
So it's all included in there. So what will need to happen is in 2019, we'll come with a follow-up budget amendment to transfer money from capital outlay to transfers out, so we can move the money to the capital improvement fund.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next speaker we have is Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vicki, good job on this. This is one of the big things that we saw on the capital improvements, the $4 million of this. And I'm glad you showed some of the different departments, Public Works, Roads, and the Sheriff's Department contributing some dollars, in a sense, towards it. Do you know if, and maybe you know too, Steve, are those some of the grant money? I know Candace Miller was talking about some grant money maybe being able to be used for these radios, and maybe roads too. I don't know if you know.
I believe the grant money you might be referring to is relative to the scanning project.
Okay.
So they were talking with the Army Corps of Engineers, I believe, to get money, about $100,000 for the scanning project. The $72,000 we're talking about here will be charged back to the drainage districts.
Okay, gotcha, to the draining districts. Yep. Okay, so just because I know there was talk about grant money trying to help, I assume all the money that we got out there is reflected in this recommendation sheet, right? We're not going to get any more. Right. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Leonetti. Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, young lady. I appreciate it. I know it was a lot of work to break this all out, so I apologize, but it's much appreciated.
You're welcome.
With that said, a couple of quick things for you. With a whole bunch of radios that we don't need anymore, that are still operable with a percentage, if you wanted to say 75% are still good, knowing that they're going towards the not-so-good category. If we graded them, there's still some value to those. So what is the game plan with all the spare batteries, spare parts, spare radios that we're removing from all the vehicles and all the handhelds and all the apparatuses? What is the game plan for those?
Yeah, hi, Sean McCarthy from Technical Services. We would hope that these radios would come in our possession so we could keep radios running, because part of the driving force here is those radios are no longer supported, and there will be people that are just not able to take advantage of this situation and run old radios. So we'll maybe use some for that.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
We would hope to get some of the radios in an effort to keep some of the older radios that don't take advantage of this project and keep them running. Parts.
For other departments in the county.
Yeah,
Not everybody is switching over at this time, so history, tech services always gets the spare parts, keeps the spare parts, and always tries to keep other departments going. And of course, charge for those services like we normally would.
There's the key.
For anybody else, yes, no different, but we'll kind of take them in and create a cache and use them where we can for other jurisdictions until they're basically forced to buy new radios themselves.
Perfect.
Sorry.
Thank you.
That helps.
No,
Nope,
that's-
that helped, that helped me. Thank you very
Got
much.
that working
Steve,
nicely.
if I can ask you a couple of quick questions? Again, thank you for doing the due diligence with her and breaking this all up.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yep.
With that said, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was $4 million that we put in because we were kind of guessing where we needed to be at the time. And we put that in the capital projects for the radios. Now that we're only going to be withdrawing $3,186,000 or whatever the exact number is, the difference is in the capital projects, is that going back into the general fund?
We won't, it'll go into a contingency account, so, I don't want to speak for him when he's not here, but Chairman Smith and I have had a conversation of
Okay, I'd like to-
possibly keeping the $13.6 million in the budget and coming to the board to authorize a transfer to build up that contingency
I would
we've been
like to
talking
talk
about.
offline on that. I
Yep.
just, because as I add
Yeah.
these things up, big
Yep,
numbers are running
absolutely.
through this little
Correct.
noggin I got. Thank you.
Yep.
You all set, Commissioner? Thank you, Commissioner Carabelli. Next on the list, I have Commissioner Jolett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your work on this project. And I'm a little curious on the process to some degree. Don't have any knowledge of how that works, but when you got a quote, for example, for the discount purchase from Motorola for the 3.878 or whatever it is, is it like buying a car? Do we throw back, we'll give you 3.5? You know, do we counter in any way a quote from them?
No, we did. I mean, we did sit down and talk to him and negotiate, but we knew at the time that we were starting this process with Motorola. They had other discount pricing that was out there that was above beyond their state contracting and their lease purchase price. So we went and we said we knew at that time it was approximately 50% off their list price. And we said we want better than the 50%. You can't come back and give us what you were offering, say, December of last year. So we did sit down, they looked at our numbers, they knew what the quotes were in coming in, and basically on the radio pieces, they got us up to 53-54%, depending on the item. And we did talk to them, is that the best you can do? We talked about some other different types of plans. We asked for a couple additional years on their warranty. We went from 3 to 5 with essentially no cost change. So that was better than what they were offering other people. So there was some small amount of negotiation. But I'm also going to say because of what we knew what the climate already was, we kind of knew where we were going to end up.
Okay. Yeah, not sure how the process works. Don't know if you call them on Black Friday and ask for 70% off. But all right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Jolett. Next, we have Commissioner Brown.
Could we use any of UHASI's grants for this equipment?
Essentially, our UASI money is down to $500,000. And that UASI money is meant to be utilized countywide.
Well, why don't we take care of ourselves first for a change?
Well, because we already do that. County gets a lot of money that does come in out of the LPT funding. And
Those
that
fire
comes,
departments love you and love the department because you advocate for them so strongly that maybe we need to be looking out for ourselves sometimes too.
right. And we did, and that's why we did the countywide purchase, and I understand that. But to being a department that does serve countywide, we have to make sure that we maintain those relationships and take care of the other entities in the county as well, is our approach to it. And that's also why I knew when we wanted to purchase our 1,500 or so radios, I also asked the other departments to say, hey, would you entertain going into a countywide purchase? Because technically countywide, we have close to 3,500. So the discounted pricing we got wasn't really based off of our 1,500 radios, it was based off of 3,500. So that was some of the give and take.
All right. How long has Motorola provided our radios to this county?
I believe, yeah,
Since the
since
beginning of time.
radio department's been in existence since 1930s, and we've been with Motorola since then, 30s and 40s. So yeah, 80,
It's been that long.
yeah.
So they're the only company that can provide these radios in all the world.
The only type that provides the Motorola radios, and that we're on a Motorola radio system. There are other vendors out there.
So we have, actually, we're negotiating with saying it's got a monopoly on us.
Yes, but also based on the expertise of our own in-house resources and their years of experience, close to 80, 90 years.
There's been no complaints with Motorola, I'm not saying anything about
Right.
that, but we've had the same vendor for as long as I've been here, and even as long as Commissioner Sauger's been here.
That's a long time.
And
And- Right. Call box. It's a call box, right?
it's got a long cord on it.
And we have tried others. We've had other systems in the past. We've had other control stations, things of that nature from other vendors, and they just do not have the reliability and sustainability that Motorola does. And when you start dealing with public safety radios that are critical, you know, we put that at very high value and making sure that they're gonna last. But we do look at them, we take them in, we get demos. We had demos out for other vendors, and we're constantly doing that, and
What
and
kind of
this is the
appreciation
best.
do we get from these communities for doing all these good services for them for these decades? And all your good work and all your team, because everywhere I go, they'll praise our radio department and what you've done and all that, and that's great. But I mean, what are we getting in return besides goodwill?
I think that's it, and providing services that we do as a county, and
Okay.
I think that's
I mean,
invaluable.
I was saying, go back to the $500,000 you asked, why don't we help our budget out once in a while? I'm thinking, anyway.
Thank
It's
you,
a good program
Commissioner.
now, we're not gonna do it this year, but something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Thank you, Ms. Wilbur, and thank you, Mr. Lewis. We have a motion on the floor by Duje and a second by Carabelli to forward this to finance. Please vote. Motion passes 11 to zip.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming down.
Thank you.
Item D is a grant award, Emergency Management 2018 COPS School Violence Prevention Program. You don't look like Vicki Walbert.
I am not Vicki Walbert. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I am actually Brandon Lewis.
Oh, hi. Who's the
Yeah.
other gentleman?
That's Sean McCarthy. He's the
Hi,
manager
Sean.
of our radio shop.
You're up, Brandon. Thank
so
you.
I'm Brandon Lewis. I'm the interim director of emergency management and communications since Vicki's promotion to the county executive's office.
Oh, yes.
And we are here before you this afternoon to seek acceptance of a school violence prevention grant program that we applied for back in July. We were awarded one of only 4 awards that were awarded in the state of Michigan. We were awarded $316,860 in federal funds to be used over the course of 2 years to hire 2 emergency management coordinators dedicated to school safety who will work out of our office and work in conjunction with the Macomb Intermediate School District to provide risk assessment services for schools, planning support for schools in the county, training and exercise support, and things of that nature. The grant does require a 25% match, so while we were awarded the $316,860 over 2 years, the grant requires a match of $105,620, also split over 2 years, which we have agreed to split 50-50 with the Macomb Intermediate School District. So we will be responsible in the end for $26,405 each year for 2 years over the course of the program. So we will in turn bill the ISD quarterly, and they'll pay us for their share over the 2 years. And we're hoping to bring in, at this point, our initial application was to bring in 2 full-time staff. We are exploring the idea of perhaps making it 1 full-time staff and 2 part-time staff, depending on which works better for our manpower issues and which works better for our potential talent pool that we're going to find through the application process. That decision will be made in conjunction with Human Resources, and then depending on what we decide, we'll go back to the Department of Justice and amend that grant appropriately in order to make sure they reflect the proper staffing concerns.
Okay. Before we start, Commissioners, again, I need a motion to forward this to the Finance Committee. Moved by Commissioner Myjack, supported by Commissioner Brown. We have some questions from commissioners. First on the list, Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good job in getting grants. We're always happy when folks can get grant money here for the county. So $316,000, and then we got Macomb Intermediate helping along. That's good for the county. I'm looking at the letter here from the Department of Justice, who I guess provided the grant. They say here, your agency may use the award of funds to improve security at schools and on school grounds within your jurisdiction through evidence-based school safety programs. Now, you're talking about hiring 2 people. Can you give us a little bit more detail? The 2 people you're going to hire to be administrators, how are they?
They're not simply administrators.
Okay.
So what they're going to do is they're actually going to go out in the field and they're going to work at these schools.
Okay.
They're going to work with the school staff to help them do security assessments. They're going to help them update their school emergency response plans. They're going to help them plan training and exercise programs that are going to improve safety in the school. So in terms of the results-oriented school safety programs, that's what we applied for. It was not an equipment grant.
Okay.
If that's, it wasn't an equipment grant. Yeah, okay.
I wasn't sure if it was an equipment grant or if it was just somebody that's going to do some big study and, and then some kind of pamphlet will come out. You're actually going to put people in the field.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why we decided to keep it in-house as opposed to, doing some kind of contractor study. These are actually going to be results-based programs in the field, working with our administrators, teachers, and probably even students.
Okay. All right. Good. I look forward to seeing some results on it. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Leonetti. Next on is Commissioner Carabelli. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Kleinfeld, please.
That's okay, thank you. Steve, in the recommended motion is for the acceptance of the grant, but under recommended action, it says also provide a budget amendment, and then it lays out the budget amendment for Fund 350. Are you seeking 2 different motions, a budget amendment motion, and then, because it's separated out, and we don't have an agenda item for that budget amendment, but it is under recommended action.
Yeah, we will need a budget adjustment to do.
So we'll
to
need
the-
2
yeah.
motions. Okay, thank you. So after the first one, thank you.
Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, thank you for your time on this. I see that the ISD is going to be, help match the grant requirement. Being that the ISD works with all the school districts, who's all going to benefit from this? So the ISD, or are we talking all the individual school districts they're going to be working with on the behalf through this grant process?
I mean,
with
they
you?
will, both of those entities will benefit, but we are talking more as much about the individual schools and school districts where these personnel will be going out and assisting their staff in doing all those activities in the field. They'll be the primary recipients of the benefit of this program.
Okay, so you're going to try to, how many school districts do we have? I don't know, a lot. So all of them are going to benefit? Because this isn't that much money to be taking care of all the districts, so.
Right.
Other than Utica Community Schools, you're going to help somebody else?
There are approximately,
Well, it's to help them put plans together.
Yeah.
I understand that. So again, my question is, it's a lot of money, but then again, looking at a bigger picture, it's not that much money.
yes.
So I was just wondering, like if any of the other school districts were gonna get it besides Utica, so I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, no, we're going to do our best to get them out to as many districts as possible. We're not going to try to centralize them or.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Carabelli. Next on the agenda, we have Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. This is a good program. There's a move to do this. In Congress, Congressman Mitchell has introduced legislation and hopefully get it done before the first of the year here that provides school resource officers to local departments. And they'll fund up to 75% of the wage, and local pick up to 25%. And that'll put resource officers in every school. Every school, should they choose to want them, and pay the 25%. So this is a precursor of what's been talked about elsewhere. And so it's a good start, and maybe there's some more coming down the way. So.
Well, and not only a precursor, it's a good complement to a program like that, because these personnel will be a good additional resource for those school resource officers that are currently in the schools to work with to improve the school safety plans.
They've upped, the schools are upping the level of security at all levels, so very good. Thank you for your help. Bye.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown.
Okay. Yes, Steve, I had asked you for both of the emergency management items about the budget amendments, and you told me they were both going to be 2019. So that's why it wasn't on this agenda. So they're good with just the grant award, and you're bringing both?
Yeah.
Okay. That's why it wasn't listed on there.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder. I guess you could make a 2019 budget amendment today. It's nothing technically that would disallow that. It's just a little more easy to find a budget adjustment for 19.
In 19.
In 19
Okay.
versus going back into minutes for 18.
So,
It doesn't matter. To me, it doesn't really matter as long as the budget amendment's approved. So procedurally, however you want to do it. You know.
okay. Well, okay, yeah.
Well, Commissioner Kleinfeld, you have your finance, so what would you like to have a separate?
If it's not necessary, it's not necessary.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay. Any other commissioners wish to speak? Seeing none, we currently have on the floor a motion to adopt, to forward this to Finance Committee from, who do we have it from? Majek, and we have a second from Commissioner Brown. Please vote. Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you all for attending. Next, we have item 6, which is new business. Any commissioners out here with new business, please? Seeing none, I'll move to public participation. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak? You have 5 minutes. Nobody wishes to speak. I see item 8, which is adjournment. It's motion to adjourn is by Leonetti and seconded by Mr. Majek. Please vote. Please vote. Motion passes 11 to... It's coming up. No, motion passes 10-1. Andre Duze saying no.
All right, I gotta say it.